Okay, happy Halloween. And in spirit of the holiday, I'm going to show you how to make a treat with a couple simple tricks. We're going to do a quick pickle. Long story short, got into pickling a little while ago. I've always liked it. It's just one of those things that it's not prohibitively costly at the store, but it's getting so expensive that you might as well just make it at home. Plus, it's fun. Main things you're going to need is vinegar, salt, and sugar. Alright, that's going to help with your osmolarity. Going to have to go with a sea salt. You don't want anything with iodine in it. I would not recommend pink Himalayan salt or any kind of exotic salts like that. Just stick with sea salt. So you saw my 27.5 pounder one. I'm just going to finish up the remainder of this Kirkland here, because it doesn't really take that much for a batch. I'll be using a mason jar, and just to back it up, in case I run out of space, I'm going to use this sealable quart jar. But the reason I like the mason jar is because the pickles that I'm using, these Persian pickles, some of them can be quite long. But this is how big they grow at maturity. And I find that they pickle up just fine. I'm slicing them in half. So I sliced 8 in half, that's 16 total pieces of pickle. So I'm using a standard 1 quart mason jar. This one's fresh from the factory. Now, it's got almost like a fishy smell to it when you take it out of the factory. But that's just that stale inner air. I think they pump them with nitrogen. Generally speaking, they're already sterile on the inside. But what I would recommend is just rinsing it out. There's nothing typically in there that's going to kill you. Although in this world, almost everything is engineered to. So, what am I going to add first? I'm going to add the vinegar. Alright, I'm going to add 1 cup. You're going to go 1 to 1 with your water and vinegar. So 1 cup of vinegar, 1 cup of water. I got a ½ cup measuring device here. Don't know why I didn't just opt for a whole cup. I think this one was just handy. So, 2 of these to get you to a whole cup. Add just a slight splash. Now here's the thing, you're going to want to use 5% vinegar, or you're going to want to get it somewhere around there, especially for a quick pickling process. We're not doing a fermentation, and we want to limit the chances of bacterial growth or botulism. So again, 1 for 1. So the reason you want to go with 5% is if you go with anything higher, generally your pickles are going to come back. Let's give the angel share just a hair. They're going to come back a little wrinkly, and that is generally unappealing, and they're not going to have the same level of crunch. You know what? I'm going to start adding the salt. Just going to do a tablespoon of salt. You could salt to taste. You can add a dash more, dash less. I recommend, you know what? Don't add a dash less. I recommend add a minimum tablespoon of fine crystal sea salt. So that's just a hair more, just to show you there's flexibility in the recipe. You can pretty much eyeball everything. I'm do 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'm using Domino granulated sugar. Again, grain size counts. If you're using kosher salt, coarse kosher salt, you're going to have to bump that up to at least a tablespoon and a half. That's my recommendation. That's not any kind of, practical conversion based on grain size. Get a spoon out here to stir that. So right now the mix is cold, and it's a super saturated solution, so not all of your salt and sugar is going to dissolve. But right now I'm just mixing it up to mix it up. Now you can throw in anything, basically in any order. I'm going to throw in this dried chili pepper and just a handful of cloves of garlic there. I'll show you how to split up your garlic. Generally speaking, you want to get the root portion off. Let's set this up here. I think that ought to capture it. Yeah, generally you want to get the root portion off. Use the flat of your knife. Just give it a slight whack. And it'll jump right out of the skin. Now you'll see that one, I knew it was going to be spotted up. You're going to want to either cut around that or discard it. I generally would not use that because at the end of the day, when I'm pickling everything in the jar. So I'm not just, you know, going for the cucumbers. I'm going to eat, you know, a dried chili. I'll probably throw that in another recipe. If it's like a fresh chili, I'm just going to eat that as it comes out. But I'm going to be eating that garlic later. Same thing with this onion. You only need a couple slivers, but I like onion flavor. I'm using a red. It's cut very thin, but I'm going to use basically that whole sectioned off part because I'm going to eat those. I like red onions, and when they're pickled, they are damn delicious. They impart a pretty good flavor, I find. Next, I'm going to add the dill to the mix here. I'm going to go with a 1/4 teaspoon. You don't need a whole lot, especially with this fine ground stuff. I typically grow my own, but I had to mow it over because it got too rooty. It's just, it didn't have the same flavor at maturity. Somewhere around the, depending on how fast it's growing and how much sun it's getting, somewhere around the 3-week to 6-week mark is perfect. Perfect for wild dill. Or not wild dill, but you know, any kind of dill. It doesn't have to be wild. Next thing, I'm going to add a little bit more salt, but this is calcium chloride. This is called Pickle Fresh. But yeah, calcium chloride. It's the same stuff that they call cement safe for your driveway. You can even see it's about the same size balls. But this is food grade, obviously. And I'm just going to add a couple grains more just because. Again, this is something you can eyeball. So we've added salt, we've added sugar, we've added spices, not all the spices. I'm going to add pink peppercorns. It usually calls for 6 to 7 black peppercorns. So why am I using pink? One, this 1 gallon jar here, or bucket, I didn't order it. I was trying to order pickle spices. Again, just 6 or 7 of them. It's enough. But they sent me this, which is like, I don't know, $10 more or so. And I complained, and then they went to send me additional pickle spices that I actually had paid for and ordered. I basically had to reorder it. And they sent me a gallon of cloves. So I decided not to go with that company and ordered pickle spices from another. You only need a teaspoon of this. So 1 teaspoon. Make sure you get a lot of coriander in there, and it's bay leaves. There is dried up chili peppers in this mix that I got. However, I like to make sure and ensure that I have added a whole actual chili pepper because it's going to impart just the right flavor on your pickles, especially these Persian pickles. So we got our salt, we got our sugar, we got our dill, we got our garlic, we got our onions. We got our pickle spices with bay leaves, coriander, etc. And we have our peppercorns, and obviously water and vinegar. Oh, missed a clove of garlic there. That'll be for me. Good for the immunity. Give it another stir. As far as my recipe goes, I'm not leaving anything out. Now, got to get it up to temperature to get that super saturated solution dissolved. Add some water sitting on a boil here. Try not to get any condensation on the camera. I'm just going to set my mason jar down in there and almost use it to act as a double boiler. Probably should have threw a light on. We'll let that sit in that boiler for about 10 minutes. It doesn't necessarily have to come to a boil in the jar itself. But again, what that's doing is that's getting your salt and your sugar in the solution. And it's dispersing the flavor of the onion, the garlic, the dill, the pickle spices, the pepper, it's getting all that kind of melted into that solution. You're going to lose a little bit of water, and you're going to gain acidity if it boils off. But at the same time, it's not so much so that it's going to change the concentration level that's out of proportion. I'm going to take that out and just ensure that that solution's stirred up and that all the crystal sugar and salt is dissolved. And then I'm going to add the pickles. You're starting again. You got a quart mason jar. You got 2 cups of solution, which is 16 fluid ounces, so half. And as you add the pickles, it's going to displace up. The reason I like those thin mason jars as opposed to, say, this quart jar, which is wider than it is, it's wider than a mason jar is. You don't get the same submersion, so you'll have your pickles sticking up at the top. And then what you got to do is you got to rotate it while it's in your refrigerator. How long do we refrigerate these? I'd recommend it a minimum of 3 days. I got a 3-day pickles. Grab those 2. This is a 3-day mix. Same recipe. Less garlic, but same recipe. And this is probably 3 weeks. This is as long as I've kept this one. They're good to go. I generally wouldn't consume these after day 10. Only because you start to lose a little bit of the crunch. And mouthfeel is pretty important when you're talking about pickles. But these, and I think that calcium chloride pickle fresh, these have retained their crunch over time. Damn tasty. At least I can't complain. So in this mix, you probably can't tell, but the garlic can turn blue. If your garlic turns blue, that's not a sign of rot or anything. Again, generally it's pretty sterile in that environment, especially with the vinegar solution. It's just a chemical reaction. I forget exactly which one. Definitely has something to do with the sulfate from the sulfur in the garlic. Copper, yeah, sulfate usually turns blue in acidic reactions. I have not opened this one. I'm going to give it a little test here. Alright, so these have been going for a little over 3 days. Perfect. I would say that this recipe and these proportions rival almost any pickle on the market. I like mine spicy. I don't like that bread and butter bullshit. I was using ghost peppers, habaneros, what else? Scorpion peppers. Now what I do is I don't cut them, I leave them in whole. Let's get that mason jar top set. Yeah, so I got 3 of these that I batched up 3 days ago. I'm gonna give one to my buddy Joe, since he's the one who suggested that I do this video in this pickle suit that I had purchased for $20 at a party where I may have drank too much. Alright, so we've taken that out of the solution. So the reason I started doing it like this was because I was just getting tired of spilling. Because I would do that 2-cup solution, and when I would pour it into a jar with the pickles already packed in, it would always come up and out. So doing it like this prevents that. is a little bit more difficult than just throwing your solution in a pot and boiling it up and dumping it in a jar. Yeah, maybe. You know, could I use a little bit more patience and precision and, you know, avoid that whole situation? Yeah, maybe. Maybe. But again, this is just how I do. And I'm probably not going to pack them all in, because I'm already getting to the top here. But as long as I could submerge the pickles that I do pack in completely without spilling or coming over the top, I will generally label that a success. Alright. Right at the precipice there. I'll go over the sink here. I could just chop that one down a little bit. But again, all worked out in the end. I'm going to wipe that top. That way I get a good seal. And I'm going to let it sit for about 20 minutes before I put it in the refrigerator. Just to kind of get that tempering, if you will. But yeah. There's 1,000 ways and just as many recipes, if not more. And you could do it however you choose if you got a better method than mine. I like that because there's almost no air in the jar. And again, everything's submerged. Yeah, if you know a better way to skin that cat, stick with that. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cucumbers left over. I think I'll just eat them as is. Need the roughage anyways. Alright, so there's a couple tricks to make a treat, and happy Halloween.